So one of my more popular videos on YouTube is called Plumbing and Bathroom Explained in 4 Minutes. So I got a lot of people watching that and with good reviews, but they also asked me like, hey, I'm doing a master bathroom and I have 2 vanities in it. I have maybe an extra bathtub. So when you have a project like that, it can get a little bit different as far as how you plumb it. There's different ways to vent, different ways to run pipe and things like that. So what I'm going to do here is set up one layout where we have a toilet, 2 vanities, and a shower, and we're going to walk through that. Now, if you're in a position where you're trying to figure out a layout for a bathroom or even plumbing your own house, and this doesn't exactly line up with what you're looking for, I've started a website where I'm doing online plumbing consulting, where I'm taking people's plans or even just a sketch, and I'm making custom-made videos just like this, addressing their issues, helping them figure out the plumbing for their specific project. So if you think that would help you, reach out to me at risingtideplumbing.com. There's a tab there called Plumbing Consulting. Link up with me there and I'll get you a video like this explaining your project and how you can do it. Okay, with all that said, let's take a look at this master bathroom. All right, so let's start breaking this down. We're here in our master bathroom. We've got the toilet, one of the vanities, the other vanity, and then the shower. So we're going to start breaking this down real quick. So talk about the toilet for a second. When you're measuring out for a toilet, when you're trying to get your placement right, make sure that you have 12 inches from the center of the flange to what the back wall, finish wall is going to be. All right, give yourself 15 inches on each side for clearance on each side of the toilet. As far as underneath the toilet, you can see it drops through the toilet flange here into a long sweep, a 3-inch long sweep. A lot of times, if you're, depending on the code that you're in, if the distance between the bottom of the flange and the center line of this horizontal line leaving the toilet is under 12 inches, you can use a short turn 90 right here. I usually recommend using a long sweep here. It just has more of a turn in it for the flow of the water and the waste. But if you're in a place where you have a height constraint, and that is one of the codes that is in your area that you can do that, you can use a short turn 90 right there. So 3-inch coming out horizontal, going into the first fitting is a 3x2Y, which is going to go and get the rest of these fittings. As far as 3-inch goes, you want to make sure that you have at least an 1/8 of an inch of pitch per foot of fall to let everything flow the way that it should. So then here out of the 3x2Y, it's going to go and connect to whatever part of the house you're tying it into, or in your new construction tying into the rest of the plumbing system. All right, now let's pick it up here at this 3x2Y. So we have 2-inch coming off here and it's going through another 2-inch Y and going straight up and get the first lavatory out of a 2-inch long sweep here. Now, when we're talking about pitching lines for 2-inch, you want to make sure, since this is a smaller line, you want to make sure that this 2-inch line, or all the 2-inch lines that you're going to be running, have a 1/4 inch of fall per foot on it. So again, we're coming out of the 3x2, going into a 2-inch Y that's going to go over to the other vanity and over to the P-trap for the shower. But again, we came off of this with a 2-inch sweep up into a 2x1.5 by 2-inch T. The 1.5 inch is going to come out underneath of your cabinet or whatever vanity you choose, and it's going to come into a P-trap that's going to receive the waste from the sink. The 2-inch is going to come up off of this fitting, and that's going to be for a vent for the lines. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about venting in just a second. So let's go back to this 2-inch Y. We're going to come off of this 2-inch Y and heads over to the other vanity and over to the P-trap for the shower. This 2-inch line goes through this 2-inch Y that's going to go over it, and like I said, get this P-trap, come up into a 2-inch long sweep, and then up into a 2x1.5, and on this one we're going to put an 1.5 inch vent on it. Again, we'll talk about all that in a second. Now, back to the 2-inch Y, the last one. This comes off over into a 45 and then goes up for the P-trap for the shower. Now, let's talk about venting for a second. Every fixture needs access to air so it'll drain properly. If you remember the analogy that I've used before where you put a finger over top of a straw that has water in it, the water is not going to go anywhere until you let it get some air. So every fixture needs to have access to air to be able to drain. So these fixtures, these 4, are going to have its access to air via these 2 vents. A lot of places in the country, they have different codes that say you have to have different vents and different individual vents. Like I said, I'm finding out a lot about different codes around the country through the online plumbing consulting I'm doing. But this instance, we're doing a wet vent here. And let me explain to you how this works. So at this junction right here, we have a place where the water is going in and this T coming from the P-trap from the vanity. Also, the vents going up. So this area from here all the way back to right here is sized as a wet vent because this area is sized to where the waste will be on the bottom of the pipe and air is flowing on the top, getting access to air through the pipe that's going to go up through the roof or into an air admittance valve. So that's a wet vent. It's sized so that it will provide air for these fixtures and even give access for venting for the toilet. So the wet vent starts right here where the air and water start sharing space, goes all the way to here because that's where the toilet gets access to its air. So the wet vent from here to here, and that's how the toilet is vented, and the access that the shower gets to its air is right here because that air and waste are sharing space right here, allowing air for the movement of the water from that P-trap. Now if you think about it, we have two wet vents here since we have another vanity here. Another wet vent starts here where the water comes out of the trap, sharing space with the air, and it comes down to here as well. So we actually have two wet vents in this setup right here. Now, how these two vents will terminate. So you got the 1.5 inch coming up here, 2 inch coming up here. So these have to have access to fresh air by going through the roof. Typically in a situation like this, since they're so close together, you'll come up, tie them together and go through the roof, or you can go into something called an air admittance valve. I actually have a video on my YouTube channel talking about air admittance valves, where you can use them, how they work, so you can watch that. It's probably about 4 or 5 minute long, but it'll make all that make more sense about how those work. But these two vents are what's going to get access for air for all of these fixtures through a wet vent. Okay, so let's talk about cleanouts for a second. A cleanout is a part of a plumbing system where you can remove a fitting or take off a cap to where you have access to clean out a system if it's backing up. So in this instance, under the code where I am, the toilet is considered a removable fixture and you can clean it out via the toilet. Same with a P-trap under a sink. Since it's removable, you can get access to this plumbing drain system here via the trap under the sink. Same with a P-trap on a shower. You have access going through the P-trap to clean that out if need be. Now, cleanouts, as I'm learning, that's very different from code to code to code, from state to state. So that's one thing you need to watch out for wherever you're doing your work. The other thing, as far as cleanouts go, most codes have a stipulation on how many turns that you can have before you have a cleanout. So picture this for a second. This right here is a 2 inch 45. It makes a 45-degree turn. The code where I am says that I can't have more than 4 45-degree turns before I have a clean out. So what that means is every time I'm laying out something like this, I'm always thinking, okay, how many turns do I have? If I can lay it out so I don't have more than 4 45-degree turns or 2 90-degree turns, which make 180 degrees, I'm always trying to lay that out so I don't go over that, so I don't have to figure out a way to get another clean out in there. But again, that varies from code to code, even jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Another thing I want to talk about is trap arms. Okay, so let's use this shower as an example. So you can see here we have a P-trap under the shower, which the water sits in and keeps sewer gas from coming back into the house. So there's a part on this trap where that water just sits on this side right here. It's called a trap weir. So technically what we're talking about is the distance from the trap weir to where this drain gets access to air. So if you think about it, remember this is a wet vent. So this shower gets its access to air right here, right where it comes in, ties into where this is, because that's the wet vent. So right here, the distance from here to here is called a trap arm. And different codes say that this trap arm length, depending on the pipe size, can only be a maximum and a minimum. The maximum length in my jurisdiction from the trap weir on a 2 inch trap arm is 8 feet. So wherever you're at, that is a code you definitely need to pay attention to. Same thing on a toilet. This is considered a trap arm for a toilet because we talked about this gets its access to air right here. This is where the wet vent ties in, allowing air for this toilet to function properly, okay? So this distance here is a trap arm for the toilet. Now where I am, the distance on a 3 inch trap arm is 12 feet. I've seen in different codes where it's a maximum of 6 feet. So that's another thing you have to keep in mind when you're designing these systems and looking into the specific code that you need to follow in your area. So look, there can be a lot to this depending on the jurisdiction you are and the codes that you have to follow. There's a lot to keep in mind while you're doing this. And on top of that, this is only one configuration. Just picture this a second. What if you have these 4 fixtures in your remodel or your new design, and the lavatory's over here, and there's a shower here? Or like we said before, what if there's a tub in here somewhere? There's different ways via different codes where you can vent that differently, increasing to maybe a 3-inch wet vent instead of a 2-inch wet vent that we talked about to make it work properly. So again, there is a lot to it, but if I could help you in any way, reach out to me via risingtideplumbing.com. There's a tab there. It's called Plumbing Consulting. You can email me through there. I'll get back with you. We'll see how we can figure out and work this thing out together. Again, I'm studying codes from all over the country, helping people figure stuff out. So again, thanks for watching. Hope it helped, and we'll see you on the next one.